Hi guys, how are you? Welcome back to my garden. Can you tell? No wind. At least it's just a little bit of a breeze still coming from north and yes, still being cold and chilly, but I don't mind because the weather forecast predicted storm for today, which is not a thing, and it also predicted that we're going to have an entire day of overcast, and look at that. Sun is out, almost clear blue skies, and it starts to feel almost like spring and warm again, which is wonderful. Sometimes I think when I check the weather app, it isn't really sure where I am, because if I just look over there direction west where the city of Gdansk is, there are clouds, but then the clouds just start and fizzle out towards my direction here, and I really think it has to do with the location being so close to the Baltic Sea and just on top of a dike next to the river. So what I try and do now, at least remind myself every second or third video, because if this is the first video that you ever see from me, I am gardening really close to the Baltic Sea, at the south coast of the Baltic Sea in Poland, outside the city of Gdansk. I'm in a zone 7B. It is a microclimate here, so if I just drive 50 kilometers south, it is an entire completely different climate already. So I'm really fortunate here. The soil condition, I have no idea about pH level or anything. I've never done a test so far. But generally the soil is quite sandy, well drained, which means it is perfect for growing any kind of bulbs, tulips, dahlias, all those things that do not like to sit in soggy soil, but it also means that whenever I plant something, I need to amend the soil, which I've done in the back of a garden in the new herbaceous border. So if you've seen my previous videos, that I spent quite some days already working in the new herbaceous border, removing the turf, putting stone edges in, preparing the soil, really fertilizing it, mulching it. We already planted the first sphere there, and I'm really happy with that so far. And what I want to do today is start planting. Not a lot though, because the majority of the plants that will go in there, I will buy in Germany, because end of April, I will go for 2 weeks eventually, 1 or 2 weeks. I need to see back to Düsseldorf. Number one is I want to see friends and family. Number two is I also had a voucher for a garden center, and I could really utilize it now, obviously. So I'm going to buy all my plants. They've ordered them already. I just need to pick them up and then I drive them back here. So in May there will be a big planting day only in the herbaceous border. Today I want to start that though a little bit, because some of the plants that I want to put in the new herbaceous border, they come from the garden. So just behind the fence I have a nice big drift of sedums. Not sure about what variety it is. But they're there already for quite some years. They've grown to really good, substantial plants. So I think if I lift a single plant, I could divide it easily into 4 clumps at least. And this is perfect because then I have plants for free pretty much. And last year when I developed that slope into these terraces, I used areas also kind of like a parking lot for plants a little bit. So I have a nice drift of grasses there that I could lift as well, because I don't really want to have them on a slope, but I really want to have them in a new herbaceous border. So I can lift those grasses, divide them as well, and put them in there. So first thing that I want to do is take you with me to the back of a garden, quickly show you the border again, how it looks right now, and then show you the sedums and the grasses. If this is the first video you ever watched from me, this is my very ambitious garden assistant. This is Alfie. She's always with me in the garden. She's now, oh my goodness, she was born in June. So 10 month old, I think. Are you 10 month old now? Yeah, are you? I think you are. But she's always with me in the garden, joy of my life, and today as well. I think she wants to play with me in a second, which we're going to do. But this is it. This is the new herbaceous border towards the back of the garden, and this is where we're going to work in today. So you can tell everything is mulched, everything is prepared. There is a sphere in here. And I do have a planting scheme developed for this area, because last year I planted up this entire border here, which is a herbaceous border as well. I call it the perennial border because there are many perennials and grasses in here, just a few shrubs, not a lot really. While here I intend on putting more hardwoods in. But I had a planting scheme for the border that I planted up last year, and it worked out so well that I was like, okay, I'm not going to wing it. I'm going to have a planting scheme as well and try and follow it as much as I can, because I really liked it and it was so much easier. This is my pretty amateur planting scheme, but it really helps me to visualize it, really to sketch it down and make sure that the balance of color is right in the border, color, texture, how everything works together basically. So what I have is pretty much here would be the fence, which I haven't sketched in. So everything behind the fence is almost planted up. There is a big clump of sedum here, and what I want to do is get in there, lift some of those plants divided, so I have more plants to plant them up in here and also at the front of the border. Then there is a use sphere pretty much here now, which was not initially planned in the planting scheme. So this big drift of hibiscus mahogany splendor will be smaller, which doesn't really matter that much because I want to put more of those also here on the slope actually. So that is not a bad thing really. But then behind that use sphere, I want to plant some Calamagrostis grasses. So this is a variety called Carl First. It's one of my favorite just for its really lovely upright growing habit. And I have a couple of those plants just back on the slope. So the first thing that I will do is take you with me to the slope and show you the clump of sedums that I have here. Before I lift them, then I show you the Calamagrostis grasses. And then comes about lifting, dividing, and planting everything. I'm just standing behind the fence now with you, and if I show you, this is a drift of sedums that I have. And some of these plants, they are really big, massive size. Just take a look at that. This is one individual plant, and every single stem that you see here, all these rosettes, they're gonna form an individual flower, so I can easily get in here, lift them, and chop them up into at least 4 pieces, if not more. I can even come in here, like look, there's one that is planted way too close to the other plants, so this will be so happy if I just take it out completely. And what I can do as well is get in here and remove the landscape fabric that has grown into some of these plants. It was really difficult trying to get it out, but now when I lift them, I think it's a good time to finally get in here and remove the landscape fabric. The reason on why there is landscape fabric growing in some of the sedums really dates back to the time when I developed this area, because I suppose maybe 5 or 6 years ago the entire back of the garden was only lawn. There was nothing but lawn and a compost heap, and behind the fence where I'm standing right now there was a slope and it was overgrown, but on the top layer there were only weeds growing and I couldn't take it at one point anymore. I came in here with my garden fork and I worked my way through, and I thought, how can I make it easy and manageable? So my idea back then was to cover the entire top layer here with landscape fabric and just cut holes in the landscape fabric wherever I wanted to plant something. And that has proven to be quite a dumb fool idea, because you know, I have vowels and I have a couple of molds, and those molds, they try to find a way through the landscape fabric. Most likely they found those holes where I was planting something, which meant that some of the perennials disappeared, others were just pushed out, and then they just dried and died in the sun. So if you are developing in an area and try to think about covering anything with landscape fabric and planting in holes in those landscape fabric, think twice. Maybe learn from the mistakes that others did. I would honestly not recommend it. If you have no valves, no molds, no nothing, maybe you want to do it, but also I've done my research by now and I know that covering an area with landscape fabric is never the best idea, because you block basically the entire life and organism that would improve the soil underneath it. So the soil underneath it kind of just like is dead at one point. So in general, I've learned my price. I would not do it again. I think this is also what gardening is, but at least I can tell you, and maybe you can learn from my mistakes. Once we're here in the back of a garden on the slope, I just quickly want to show you all different things and nice things that are going on right now. So this is a really lovely big drift of phlox that I have here. And I propagated these from seed, which means that they're not really true to the mother plant. I took the seeds from David, Phlox David, which blooms white. Most of the phlox here do bloom white. Some are a little bit on the pinkish side, but I don't mind here because I want to have just a lot of nice, sturdy, wonderful plants, and then I can come in here and take cuttings from my cut flower arrangements. What else I want to show you is my peonies that come into life. So excited. All these tiny red stems that you see here are gonna form stems and gonna come to flower. I think I have 5 peonies in total here. All the same variety. It's all Sarah Bernard, so they're double flowers, pink, absolutely wonderful. But what I actually want to show you is, oh well, there's something else. There is a delphinium, and delphiniums here have a hard time because they always get eaten by slugs and snails, but this one. This is the only delph that makes it. It is white. I hope it comes to flower this year, and then I intend on collecting seeds, and maybe this is really a robust one that's not been eaten by slugs and snails. But just behind there are my Calamagrostis grasses. I've got 4 clumps in total. 1 or 2 are big enough to divide them. So I'm going to lift these, and then they'll go to the new herbaceous border. I'm always distracted when Alfie comes because I'm always like, what's she doing? Hello, what are you doing? Are you having fun on the slope again? All I'm going to do is I quickly grab a spade now, and then I want to lift the 4 grasses and some of the sedum plants, carry them up into the garden, and then I want to show you how to divide those. have a wheelbarrow full of nice, good-sized plants, especially the sedums. I have two whoppers in here. Just look at them. Dividing them, they will definitely make more than just 4 plants. I'm really excited to get in there. And then I have 4 calamagrostis grasses, and lifting them I could see like, yes, I can also divide those. So I can show you how to divide both of these. The first thing that I want to divide are my sedums, and when you do your research on how to divide any kind of perennial, you'll come across quite some different ways and methods. Most common, I think, is you would just use a spade and just chop it into the center of a plant and break it into parts so you have like 2 equal sized clumps. Or you can also use 2 garden forks. That is a little more gentle, so you would just push them in the center of the plant back by back and then push them apart. So you break the plant, but it is a little more gentle. With sedums, it works a little different because the entire top growth is a little fragile in a way. So if I would chop in a spade from the top at this point, I would do more harm than good. So what I do is I come in with a garden shovel, but I want to give you a closer look on how I do it. I want to show you on this really big size clump on how to divide a sedum that has matured fairly well. So I think this hasn't been divided for at least 5 or 6 years. So the first thing I need to do, because you can tell that there is a landscape fabric here, which is a bit difficult, just come in with my scissors and try to cut it. Yes, this is exactly what I wanted to see. So I can gently get it out of here without breaking too much, I hope. All right, I'm going to stop here. Next thing I do when it comes to sedum, so if I would chop now from the top, all this top growth here, all these rosettes, everything that I chop up here will be damaged. And this is not what you want, because they will all produce flowers. So with sedums, you really do it differently. You come in with your garden shovel from here, from this angle. So all I do, I hope that this is going to be visible on the camera now, and really start chopping in here kind of gently. And the thing with sedum is the plant will tell you where it wants to break. So the first one already comes off basically. Doesn't really have a big root system, but even this tiny little clump here, if I push it into the ground, this is going to produce roots and this is going to produce another plant. So I'll put it aside. Is a root. So I just continue and continue now with really chopping in here. Okay. And you have already the sound of like how it cracks. Okay, that looks good. That looks good and that sounds good. And the more plants I get out of here, the better actually, because I really have quite some big drifts that I want to plant up. And since I don't know what variety this is, I cannot buy others in the garden center. Now it could only propagate from dividing or from cuttings, what we did already in a previous video. Right, this takes a second now, obviously. Oh, this is good. See? Ooh. So the plant really tells you where it wants to break, and now I have a wonderful, good, decent-sized clump. I mean, if I put this in the ground, you would hardly tell that this came from a division. Absolutely wonderful. Put it aside, and I think if I continue, I'm probably going to get at least like 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 more plants out of this. So this is exactly what I'm going to do, work my way through all of the sedum clumps, make sure that I end up with as many plants as possible. With a calamagrostis grass, I'm actually going to do the exact same method to how I did it with the sedum. In theory, you could really come in now with a spade and chop it from the top into pieces, but I always like to come in from the base of any kind of plant and work my way through from the roots, because I kind of feel that then they break apart a little more natural and where they want to break apart. Because if I just gently work my way in and then come in with my hands and break it, it finds its own natural way on how it wants to break. Grasses always have quite a fibrous root system, so I need to see how fast I can do this. I could not show you now talking, dividing a miscanthus, because miscanthus has the thickest mesh of roots that you could possibly imagine. So with calamagrostis that works fairly well. One little side note about Calamagrostis, you can tell it already has a lot of wonderful green top growth appearing, and they are one of those grasses that come back to life earliest in your border. Another reason on why I really enjoy to grow them. While the miscanthus, for example, they are stunning later in the year, but now you can't see a thing. There is no top growth at all. See? This is all there is to it. So I have a really nice, good, decent sized clump now, looking very happy. Obviously this is a quite small grass for this year, but next year it will be at least double this size. And I think this clump here I can even break apart into maybe 1, 2, potentially 3 more clumps. I need to see. Well, a little bit broke off, but even here this tiny stem has roots attached to it. Not sure if you can see it, but I think what I'm going to do with these is I'm just going to pot them into the ground as well and see if they grow. I mean, definitely worth it. Better than throwing it straight onto the compost heap. I divided all of the sedums and the grasses, and especially with the sedums, I'm super happy because remember, I had 2 big clumps and 2 small clumps, and after dividing, I have more than enough plants for this entire border to fill, which is really awesome. What I did is I came in there and I positioned all the plants according to my planting scheme. I do need some more Calamagrostis grasses, but I can easily buy them here in the garden center later on, so that doesn't really worry me. What I want to do now is flip the phone, show you how I positioned them, and then also quickly tell you on how I plant those. Let me quickly show you where I position the plants. So I have 2 wonderful drifts here. The first one is Sedum. They start here and then they go all the way behind the fence to this point. So I think this will be a great impact. And just in front of it, there is a wonderful drift of Calamagrostis grasses. They are a perfect planting neighbor, by the way. And what I love especially about this is that I will have the Sedum on both sides of the fence, because so far the fence was really cutting the back garden in a straight line and separating it from the slope, and I think by having the same kind of plant on both sides of the fence, it will break this pattern and will look really lovely and organic. The second drift of sedums is just here. I think it's 2 meters in total, and here they will be front row. Sedum in general is an amazing plant to put them at the front of your border, and that really has to do with the growing habit. These grow into a really wonderful dome shape, so perfect location here. They will be exposed to a lot of sun, which they really enjoy. And what is even better is that they'll have a drift here at the front, and then it echoes at the back there again, which I think is always really pleasing to the eye. Most of the clumps that I have, they have really good roots, these like big fleshy roots, so I know that they will definitely grow in extremely well. Very happy with the size of these clumps. You're not going to see at all that they came from divisions this year. When you plant sedums, they require 2 things, and I think most of the gardeners can provide that, which is number 1, poor soil, and number 2, full sun. And this is one of the reasons why I love sedum, because there's not fuzzy. There is no plant that I think is easier to grow than any sedum, so they will be very happy in this area. Since I really have sandy soil, this is the reason on why sedum grows so well here. When you plant them, make sure you plant them dead level. They should not drown, they should not sit in a puddle at all, and they also shouldn't sit like on a little mound or something. All I do is very simply, since I've already mulched in this area, come in with my shovel, quickly remove a little bit of the soil, and even though I have improved the soil, I can tell you that it is still sandy. This is just what it is, but I choose the plants that do cope well with this situation, and this is why sedum grow really well here, and also grasses are growing very well here, because a lot of the grasses, they do like a very well-drained soil. Later on in May, you will see the display on tulips. I hope we're gonna get some rain, because then the tulips will be really wonderful here. So what I do is still, I come in with just a tiny bit of organic bone chips, just as a little bit of a starting fertilizer. Make sure that I have all the roots in the planting hole now. I don't want to break any of these. That looks really nice. Obviously, since I divided it, now there really is a front and a back of a plant. So this is kind of a curve, and this is why I place the curve towards the front of the border. And all I do now is backfill it with the soil. You can also do it a little quicker. Just really put it back in there. Firm it in really nice. Since they didn't really have any kind of like soil left on the roots after dividing, I can backfill with the entire soil that I take out here, which is also quite nice, so I don't need to kind of bring soil from one part of the garden to another side of the garden. Really firm it in well, so you do not have any air pockets. And then just push the mulch back so that it is mulched in really nicely. And this is all I'm going to do now. For the grasses, the same thing applies literally. I plant them dead level. I'm going to give them just a little bit of a starting fertilizer, and this is all there is to it. Since we're already in the afternoon and I really want to plant everything, what I'm going to do now is quickly work my way through, plant everything, and then give you one final tour on how things are looking. Everything is planted, and at one point I changed my way on how to plant it, which is my lazy fast way of planting perennials. I just come in with my shovel, loughen up the soil, and then I stick the shovel into the ground, push it aside so I have a hole here, put my plant in, and then I can just backfill the soil basically, and that goes super fast. Thank God I've done it like this, because that took me like maybe half an hour, the entire planting, if. You could tell as well that at one point I started planting Aquilegia in between the Calamagrostis grasses, and this is something that I did last year in my new perennial border. And I think that they make an absolute fabulous companion, because the Calamagrostis grass comes in quite early with a wonderful fresh green growth, and you have this crown of grass at the base, and in May you have these absolute wonderful flower heads of the Aquilegias, like on these long delicate stems dancing in the border. It's a very whimsical look, and if you haven't made this combination yet in your own garden, maybe something you might want to consider, I can really recommend it. I'm going to show you in May time how it looks, because I think they are just the perfect plant partners. But what I want to do now, obviously, is flip the phone, quickly show you how the final result looks, because I'm so happy that I could get in there and start really planting my herbaceous border. Here are my sedums in the front row of a border. I think that they're going to look extremely beautiful later on in the year when they really have their full growing habit and this dome shape. You can tell that when I cut them back, I haven't done such a good thorough job, because whatever grows in the back of a garden on a slope, I cut things back obviously, but not so finicky to how I do it in the upper garden. But next year this is going to change. Maybe I should come in and cut the old stems back, but you know what? On the other hand, in a month from now, you're not going to see a single bit of that. So probably I just leave it exactly as it is. And if we move into the border, then there is a wonderful drift of Calamagrostis grasses, and back there the drift of more sedums. And here you can tell, itty bitty tiny Equilegia plants, but you know what? They still make me very happy. Even if they're not going to flower this year, I know that they will definitely flower next year. And this is going to be an absolutely wonderful look in this border. Ever wonder on what to do with your compost heap? Well, just check my background. This is what the neighbors are doing. It's a little bonfire, but I feel it's under control. I hope it is. So far, so good. There is not really a lot of wind today, which is wonderful. That was the best part of gardening today. Honestly, I'm not freezing. I feel relaxed and I feel exactly how you should feel after an afternoon in the garden. Plus, it feels so accomplished because I could finally get in there and start planting my first perennials and grasses in the new herbaceous border. I'm so happy about it because last year, literally, the garden ended there at the fence. There was just lawn. Behind the fence there were a couple of plants, and now I think it's going to be such a big difference and impact for the entire back garden. I can't wait to show you updates, but before that happens there will be more and more and more planting videos to come, because you can tell, even though I started planting, there's still a lot of empty space in there, and I'm thrilled to take you with me on this journey. Hope you enjoyed today's video, and I would really love to welcome you in my garden very soon again. Take care, guys. Bye.